Happy Sunday. You know, after my first couple of videos, some of my close friends sat me down and said, I wanted to know more about your story and the depth of it. Like it sounds like you just kind of scratched the surface. And I realized so many times in life, we kind of give a facade or we give this, first impression without really going into the depth of it. And so first, I'd like to apologize for you. I think I'd really like to share with you more about me and my own personal journey and how I came to be with it. So, after my brother died on December 28, 2007, I looked at how we were going to do his service. And this is really, I'd say, where it all started. And I'd been to so many different funerals, and some of them were really dark, and I felt like it almost took me longer to heal because of the funeral was really painful. And some of them were really light and fun and festive, and I felt like I got to really celebrate. And so with my brothers, I just decided, and as my family, we decided we're going to celebrate his life. So what we did is we sat down as a family, and we started with from the time he was born all the way up into when he died at 23 years old, and we talked about funny, fun stories that displayed his character. There's a story when he was a little kid, and he had a mind of his own. Like, he was stubborn. He did what he wanted to do on his schedule. And there's a funny story my parents told me about when he was a little kid. He used to climb all the cabinets, and they got worried, so they put little locks on him so he couldn't open them, and then he would open them like 2 inches, and then he would climb on top of the cabinets anyway. He found his way of doing it. Another funny story, we go to this place called Grey Eagle, and while we're at Grey Eagle, he's a little tiny kid, and they go fishing, and typically carp aren't like fish you want to brag about. They're kind of like they're not the healthiest or cleanest of fish, and they caught this huge carp, right? And usually a lot of people will catch them and release them or catch them and throw them back. Well, my brother was so excited, he ran around to all the cabins. We're in this little resort. He ran around to all the cabins with this huge, let's say he's this big, and the fish is this big, and he ran to all the cabins showing everybody the size of his fish, and my dad was embarrassed because he's running around showing him this carp. And anyway, so this is how the service was. I sat down and I told story after story after story of who he was and his personality and his character and this smile that he had. He always had a smile, and most loving, unconditional loving person. He had a little bowl cut when he was younger, always running around, loved to fish, loved to hunt. So tons of fishing stories, hunting stories, and I feel like it helped me heal in celebrating him. It helped my parents heal. And so many of our friends actually got to feel a healing take place of like really celebrating him. And I had so many people come up to me afterward and say, thank you. I didn't really know your brother that well, but after the service, I really feel like I got to know him, and I feel like I'm a better person. And it was so powerful, and I think that's where it just started. That's kind of what started the celebration. And then we decided to carry it on and did things like, I'm very fortunate as a family. We actually had a conversation one day and said, what would happen if we all died? What would you guys want to do? And we all talked about wanting to be cremated. And my brother said a couple places that he would want to have his ashes spread. So as a family, what we did is we go to this place called Grey Eagle, which I mentioned a minute ago. And we did this ceremony together as a family, and we huddled around, and actually some of our close friends came where we got to take his ashes and connect with them and think about him and give a talk. And I did a little fire ceremony, one of my hobbies, and it just really celebrated him. And then we took it again from there. On December 28th is the day that he died, and we would go on a trip, and we would go to different places he talked about. Like for 1 year, we were big hunters, hunting and fishing. So 1 year we went to this hunting trip, which is actually out by Burning Man, and we climbed to the top of this mountain, which we called Jeff Peak, and we put this big rock pile together, and we put the ashes under there. And so every time we look at the rock pile, we know he would be happy, and we picked the area that he'd want to face, and we really kind of created this healing experience for my mom, for my dad, and I, because there's the three of us. There was a family of 4. And then we just kept continuing it on. We kept finding ways to celebrate him. Everything from one of our good friends got my mom this blanket. It's a big, huge blanket, and it's got my brother and I, a picture of my brother and I, and she wraps it at the house. She takes it everywhere we go. So we're on a family trip. It's draped right at the entry when you walk in, or anywhere we go, she brings it. So it's really, celebrating him and having him with us wherever we're at, wherever we're going. And we also we do cards, so Christmas, birthdays, If I'm sending my cards home or messages to my parents, I send them for me, and then I send them for my brother. I get this place of calmness. I quiet my mind, and then whatever comes through, I write these notes, and it happens to be really sarcastic and rhymey, and very similar to my brother, very poetic. And then I get cards back from my parents, from my brother, and so we've created this tradition or this ritual around honoring my brother and celebrating my brother just as much as we could. I wouldn't say as much as when he was here, because it's so much different when you're here and you're in your lives, but we celebrate him and we talk about him on a weekly, sometimes daily process, and of course we're always thinking about him. But it really started to shift me. And when I went to Burning Man, we go to Burning Man, we named a camp. Our camp's called the Wanderers Camp, and my brother's name was Jeffrey Wenner, aka the Wanderer, so we named our camp after him. And we have a whole bunch of friends. We have a big sign with him, and we talk about him, and we share him. And then every year at Burning Man, I would do this forgiveness ceremony. And it was one of the most healing things that I experienced when I was going through intense pain. A lot of it, I had self-judgment. I had to forgive myself and release a lot of these judgments and guilt I had. And so the first year I just did it for my family and close friends. And then the next year, one of my best friends, he lost his brother. And so together, the two of us did it. And then every year since, now I've done this forgiveness ceremony. And it's pretty intense. I would take my brother's ashes, and this last year we probably had 50 people or so, and everybody in the circle, I give them some of my brother's ashes so they can feel and connect with the fact of, like, these are like my bones, and these are at some point I'll lose this body, and really associate, and then into the forgiveness of the heart, and asking for forgiveness from ourselves, and telling ourselves we forgive ourselves, and in that circle, I would meet friends who'd lost a child 20 years ago. And yet, when they talk about it, it was like it was yesterday. And I really started to realize, I think in our society, there's a big kink right now, in general, with death. It's like taboo. It's not talked about. Nobody wants to face it. And then it happens, and we're forced to deal with it and face to deal with our own death. And then nobody really wants to talk about it, and there's no real place to talk about it afterwards. So I think what happens, my feeling is that all that pain and suffering is locked in and stuffed away. Yet we still have to face it. The holidays, I know for my brother and I, from our family, holidays are tough, birthdays are tough. I don't think that ever gets easier. But if somebody has that much pain and it hasn't been released and there's no platform for it, I guess what I saw the need for is I see my parents and myself. And I see how even though we have our tough times around the holidays and at certain moments, the majority of the time when we talk about them, we're celebrating them. It's excitement, it's passion, it's fun. We're looking, somebody wrote me a message from a long time ago, and I'll share it with my parents, so I'll have a dream, or they'll have a dream, or something will happen, and we'll share with each other. And so when I look at my family, I look at my parents, and I see that majority of the time they're happy. That's this message of bringing death to life, is I feel like, and I look at the other type of person who is in so much pain. That's what I want to help. That's what I want to be of service with. And I have studied different types of religion, and I believe in God, and I don't think this really has to do with religion. I think these are more just tools, techniques, conversations. It's really a message, a conversation of bringing death to life. Let's talk about it. Let's have that conversation. If you have a daughter or son or parents, have the conversation. Bring death to life. Have the conversation. What happens when you die? Is everything taken care of? What do you want for yourself, and what do they want for themselves? By talking about it early, when somebody does die, and we're all going to die, you'll know what they would have wanted, and it makes it easier to go through that process. You're really making it easy for them, and the grieving process, I think, gets easier because you've talked about it, you've celebrated them, and what I would like to share is just so many ways of celebration. I'm flying home in a couple weeks, and I'm videotaping my parents, and they're going to videotape me, and we're going to ask each other all these really deep questions about who we are, and memories and things that we can have forever on a videotape. And I think that's something that more people start to face it. There are more things like that they are going to want to do. Also, for me, like, I have passwords for my computer and things that they wouldn't have an idea of. And if I died tomorrow, it would be really challenging for them, one, to deal with it, and two, just to try to figure out my stuff. So why not make that easier? And so whenever the day comes, whether it's in 100 years or tomorrow, we've had that conversation. I think it also will build deeper bonds between your family. I think it'll bond you deeper. It'll make you more connected to those you love. because you'll have those hard conversations, and you'll get to see more about who they are and how they want to be celebrated and how they want to go. Maybe they don't want to be celebrated. Everybody has a different wish or what they'd like to. It's their body, it's their spirit, it's their soul, and some people are using religious traditions, and some people are using those in a variation thereof, and some people are doing their own thing. There's so many ideas that you can do now. Everything from organic cemeteries where you can be buried in the ground and they plant a tree on top that grows, to cremation where they send, they do these cremations and they send pieces of you to different parts of the world, into space, under the ocean. There's so much you can do. So really just having that conversation, bringing the conversation to life. And I think once we face it, it's the number one fear of all humans, is that we're going to die. I really truly feel that it'll help us live more on purpose with each day, and really appreciate the body more, because wow, I'm going to lose this body, I'm going to lose this vehicle, and how do I appreciate my sight, my hearing, my taste? How do I say I love you? How do I clean up those things, that need to be cleaned up? Why wait? Why wait till we're that day on our deathbed when we're looking back at our lives to say, oh my gosh, I got to call this person and tell them I love them, and why didn't I ever call my brother and say I'm sorry? Let's do it now. Let's do it now. We still have time. So that's this message. My message is to bring death to life, to bring this conversation to life. This is just the first step. I appreciate you joining me, and hopefully this video gives you a little bit more clarity or insight into the depth of me and why I'm doing what I'm doing, and really my intent of why I want to share it, and hoping that you can join me in doing this for yourself, for your families, of just having this conversation, bring it to life, and then share it with others. So thank you. In a couple more days, I am going to open up the last video, which I do share something really cool I did for my mom, where I took one of my brother's t-shirts and had it created into a teddy bear, and I show her opening that. And also I am opening up a 5-week course, which I'm really excited about. I do a lot of these things I've talked about that I did for me, and I just want to walk through it and make it easy for people. So thank you. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I appreciate you listening.